Listen, something just shifted in the gold market. And if you're not paying attention, you're about to get left holding worthless paper while the real metal disappears. Gold just smashed through $4,600 an ounce this week. Silver's trading north of $90. And while everyone's celebrating these record highs, almost nobody's talking about what's happening behind the scenes with institutional money. Because here's what they're not telling you on the financial news. The smartest players in the room just changed their entire strategy. And I'm not talking about small moves. I'm talking about a complete reversal in how major institutions are positioning themselves in precious metals. They spent decades telling you that ETFs were the modern, convenient way to own gold. Now, they're quietly doing the exact opposite. Let me show you what I mean. Back in July of last year, something called Basel III banking regulations took effect in the United States. You probably didn't hear much about it, because frankly, they didn't want you to. But what it did was reclassify physical gold as a Tier 1 asset for banks. That means banks can now count physical gold sitting in their vaults, the same way they count cash when calculating their reserves. Think about that for a second. Gold is now officially treated like money by the global banking system. Not gold certificates, not ETF shares, not futures contracts. Physical metal you can touch. And the moment those rules went live, the institutional behavior changed overnight. Since November alone, 400 tons of gold have been shipped from London vaults to New York. That's not a normal market flow. That's panic repositioning. When you see that kind of physical movement, somebody knows something the rest of us don't yet. Here's the thing about paper gold markets. For every ounce of actual metal sitting in a vault somewhere, there are estimates suggesting 100 ounces worth of paper, claims against it. 100 contracts, shares, certificates, all supposedly backed by the same bar of gold. That works fine when nobody actually wants delivery. But what happens when the music stops and everyone shows up at the same time asking for their metal? You get what we're seeing right now with COMEX silver. Since the year 2020, registered silver inventory, that's the metal actually available for delivery, has dropped 70%. 70% gone. And commercial banks are now sitting on short positions that are billions underwater as prices keep climbing. The paper market is breaking. And the institutions positioning for what comes next aren't buying more ETF shares. They're taking physical delivery. Now I want you to understand something critical about Basel III, because this is the smoking gun that explains everything happening right now. For decades, banks treated physical gold as a risky asset. It sat in the same category as stocks or real estate. They had to hold other reserves against it. That made holding physical gold expensive from a balance sheet perspective. So what did banks do? They pushed everyone into paper gold instead. ETFs, allocated accounts, certificates. Anything that let them avoid actually storing the metal. But July 1st, 2025, changed everything. Under Basel III, physical allocated gold became a Tier 1 high-quality liquid asset. That's the same category as cash and government bonds. For the first time in modern banking history, gold is officially recognized as money at the regulatory level. You think that's an accident? You think global banking regulators suddenly decided to do this out of the goodness of their hearts? No, they saw what's coming. They saw the debt levels, the currency debasement, the instability in the bond markets, and they made sure the banking system has an escape hatch. That escape hatch is physical gold. The rules don't apply to paper gold. They apply specifically to physical, allocated metal. The banks now have every incentive to hold real gold instead of paper promises. And that's exactly what they're doing. Look at what's happening in London. The London Bullion Market Association, the LBMA, has been the global epicenter of gold trading for over a century. More than 20 million ounces of gold clear through London every single day. But starting in November, something broke. Gold started flowing out of London vaults at an unprecedented rate. 400 tons in just a few months. Where's it going? New York. Why New York? Because that's where COMEX delivery happens. That's where you can convert paper claims into physical metal. The London market has always operated on what they call unallocated gold. You don't own specific bars. You own a claim on a pool of gold that theoretically exists somewhere. It's efficient, it's liquid, and it works brilliantly until someone actually wants their metal. That's what's happening now. Institutional players are taking their London claims and converting them to New York delivery. They're moving from unallocated paper to allocated physical, and the London vaults are hemorrhaging gold to make it happen. Reuters reported in late January that London bullion market players were racing to borrow gold from central banks just to keep the market functioning. Think about that. The supposedly liquid, deep London gold market is scrambling to find physical metal. That's not a healthy market. That's a market under severe stress. And it connects directly to what we're seeing with central banks. Central banks added 220 tons of gold just in the third quarter of last year. Poland bought over 80 tons throughout 2025. Turkey, China, India, all loading up. And they're not slowing down despite prices hitting all-time highs. When a central bank buys gold at $4,600 an ounce, they're not trying to make a profit. They're trying to preserve what they have. They're looking at their reserves and realizing that dollars, euros, yen, all of it is being devalued in real time through money printing and deficit spending. Gold is the only reserve asset that can't be printed. That's why they're buying. And they're buying physical, not ETF shares, not gold certificates, physical bars delivered to their vaults. The World Gold Council data shows that central bank buying has doubled compared to the years before 2022. We're talking over 1,000 tons per year now. That's a structural shift. These institutions are permanently moving away from purely fiat reserves and back toward gold backing. And here's the key point. When central banks buy physical gold, that metal is gone from the market. It's not coming back. It's locked in a vault in Warsaw or Ankara or Beijing, and it's staying there. The available supply of physical gold keeps shrinking, while paper claims keep multiplying. Let me give you the numbers on COMEX to drive this home. As of early January, COMEX registered silver inventory. The metal actually available for delivery has collapsed to a fraction of what it was just a few years ago. We're talking about a 70% decline. The gold situation is better, but trending the same direction. Meanwhile, open interest, the number of futures contracts outstanding, remains high. So you've got fewer ounces available and the same number of claims against those ounces. At some point, the math stops working. You know what happens when the math stops working? The exchange changes the rules. They did it with the Hunt brothers in 1980. They can do it again. And when they change the rules, it's never in favor of the little guy holding paper contracts. The people who will be protected are the ones holding actual metal outside the system. Now let's talk about what happened during the 2008 financial crisis, because that's the blueprint for what's coming. In October of 2008, as Lehman Brothers collapsed and the financial system teetered on the edge, gold was trading around $730 an ounce. People were scared. Credit markets froze, stock markets crashed, and for a brief moment, gold got hit too. It dropped to around $700 because everyone needed cash and they sold whatever they could sell quickly. But here's what happened next. While stocks continued to struggle for years, gold took off. By October of 2010, just 2 years later, gold had surged to $1,300. That's almost an 80% gain. The people who held physical gold through that crisis did just fine. Their metal didn't disappear. It didn't get frozen in a bankrupt brokerage account. It was there when they needed it. But you know what a lot of people discovered during that crisis? The paper claims they thought were as good as gold weren't actually as good as gold. Some funds suspended redemptions. Some banks delayed delivery. Some financial instruments got settled in cash instead of metal at prices that didn't reflect what physical gold was actually trading for. That was the lesson of 2008. Paper and physical are not the same thing. And when the system comes under stress, that difference matters more than anything. We're seeing that same pattern set up again right now, except the scale's bigger. The debt levels are higher. The money printing is more extreme. The geopolitical tensions are worse. And this time, the institutions learned from last time. They're not waiting for the crisis to hit before they reposition. They're doing it now, while physical metal is still available at relatively reasonable premiums. Let's talk about premiums for a second, because that's where you can see the physical shortage developing in real time. When you go to buy gold from a dealer, you don't pay spot price. You pay spot plus a premium that covers the dealer's costs and profit. Normally that premium is pretty stable, maybe 3 to 5% over spot for standard bullion products. But look at what's happening now. Premiums are climbing. Certain products have extended wait times. Dealers are reporting supply constraints on specific sizes and types of coins, and this is happening while the spot price is already at record highs. That tells you demand for physical metal is outstripping supply. The paper market might show plenty of liquidity, but try to convert that paper into actual metal, and you run into friction. That friction is the warning sign. It's the market telling you that physical and paper are starting to trade in different worlds. And the institutions see it. They're watching the same data. They're experiencing the same delivery delays and premium increases, and they're responding by locking in physical metal. Now, before that friction turns into a full-blown separation, here's something most people don't understand about ETFs. When you buy shares of a gold ETF like IAU or GLD, you're buying a share of a trust that supposedly holds gold. The trust claims to have the metal. They publish reports showing vault audits and bar lists, but you as a shareholder have no direct claim on any specific bar of gold. You can't walk into the vault and take delivery. If you want metal, you have to sell your shares and then go buy physical gold separately. You're trusting the fund manager, the vault operator, the auditors, and the entire chain of custody. That trust works fine in normal times. But when have the times been normal lately? During the March 2020 COVID panic, gold ETF shares briefly traded at a discount to the value of the gold they supposedly represented. The market was essentially saying those shares were less valuable than the metal itself because there was doubt about whether you could actually convert those shares to physical delivery. It resolved relatively quickly that time, but it was a preview, a warning that paper claims can decouple from physical reality when stress enters the system. Now imagine that scenario playing out not for a few days, but for months. Imagine a situation where physical gold is trading at a significant premium to paper gold because everyone wants the real thing and nobody trusts the paper anymore. The people holding physical metal make out great. The people holding ETF shares watch their investment lag further and further behind the real metal price. That's the risk nobody talks about when they're promoting ETFs as a convenient way to own gold. Let me be clear about something. I'm not saying ETFs are worthless. I'm not saying they're all frauds. What I'm saying is they're a different animal than physical metal. They have different risks, and in the environment we're entering, those risks matter more than the convenience. BlackRock manages some of the largest gold ETFs in the world. They've made billions in fees from those products, but even they understand the difference between managing paper claims for clients and actually positioning for what happens. When the paper system breaks, the Basel III rules didn't just affect banks. They affected how institutions think about gold. The regulatory stamp of approval for physical gold as a Tier 1 asset sent a signal. It said physical gold is real money. Paper gold is a derivative of money. Smart institutions are moving accordingly. You've got a choice to make. You can follow where the institutional money was 5 years ago, piling into convenient paper products because that's what everyone recommended, or you can follow where institutional money is going right now, which is physical metal, physical delivery, physical possession. The choice seems pretty obvious to me. Now let's talk about what you actually do with this information. Physical gold means coins or bars from recognized mints and refiners. American Gold Eagles, Canadian Maple Leafs. Bars from accredited refiners with serial numbers and proper hallmarks. Products that are universally recognized and liquid when you need to sell. You want products that are easy to verify and widely accepted. Strange or obscure items might be cheaper, but they're harder to sell when the time comes. Silver works the same way. American Silver Eagles, Canadian Maple Leafs, bars from reputable sources. The goal is liquidity and verification. Storage matters. Small amounts you might keep at home in a safe. Larger amounts you might store in a private vault where you control access. Not a bank safety deposit box that the bank can freeze. The key is you need to be able to access your metal when you need it. If it's locked up in a system that can shut you out, you don't really own it. And here's what you don't do. You don't wait for the mainstream financial media to tell you it's time to buy physical gold. By the time CNBC is running specials on the shortage of physical metal, that shortage will already be so severe that you'll be paying massive premiums if you can find metal at all. The time to position yourself is when the smart money is quietly repositioning, not when everyone realizes what's happening at once. Right now, you can still buy physical gold and silver. Premiums are higher than they were a few years ago, but you can still get metal. Dealers still have inventory, the system still mostly functions. That window is closing. Not next year. Not in 6 months. It's closing now in real time as institutional money drains the available supply of physical metal. The 400 tons that left London didn't vanish. Somebody took delivery of it. Somebody converted their paper claims into real metal. That's 400 tons that is no longer available to backstop the paper market. Every ton that moves from unallocated to allocated, from paper to physical, from the LBMA to COMEX delivery, tightens the supply for everyone else. And when you combine that with central banks buying aggressively, with COMEX inventories declining, with Basel III incentivizing banks to hold physical, with commercial short positions underwater. The picture becomes very clear. We're in the early stages of a massive repricing of physical precious metals relative to paper claims. The institutions see it. That's why they're repositioning. The question is whether you're going to see it in time to act. I'll tell you what keeps me up at night. It's not the price of gold. The price will do what it does. What keeps me up at night is the thought of someone watching this video understanding everything I just laid out, agreeing with the logic, and then doing nothing because it seems like too much effort or because they'll get to it later. Later might be too late. The people who positioned themselves in physical gold before the 2008 crisis did great. The people who waited until after the crisis hit paid much higher prices and dealt with supply shortages. The people who are positioning now, while physical is still available, will look back on this as one of the smartest moves they ever made. The people who wait until everyone else figures it out will be competing for scraps of inventory at whatever price dealers decide to charge. Your choice, but make it an informed choice. Everything I've shown you today points in the same direction. Basel III changed the rules. London vaults are draining. COMEX inventories are falling. Central banks are buying aggressively. Paper to physical ratios are unsustainable. Institutional money is repositioning. These aren't opinions. These are facts you can verify yourself. The only question is what you do with those facts. If this video clicked for you, if you're seeing what's happening and you want to stay ahead of it, hit that subscribe button right now. We're tracking this story as it develops, and it's developing fast. The next few months are going to be critical. Drop a comment and tell me where you stand. Are you holding physical metal? Are you still in ETFs? Are you watching from the sidelines trying to decide? I want to know because your feedback helps me understand what this community needs to hear next. And hit that bell notification because when the next major move happens in this market, you need to know immediately, not days later, not when everyone else has already reacted. Immediately. The smart money bolt isn't a theory. It's happening right now. 400 tons of gold flowing from London to New York proves it. Central banks buying at record highs proves it. Basel III making gold equal to cash proves it. They're not dumping gold. They're dumping paper and grabbing the real thing. The question is whether you'll recognize that shift and act on it, or whether you'll keep playing the old game while the rules have already changed. Physical metal. Real possession. No counterparty risk. That's where the smart money is going. Everything else is just noise.